In emergency management, the definition of a stakeholder is any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival or recovery of a given community.
This is the Stakeholder Prepping Podcast, where the tactical comes from the practical, and today, you become your own stakeholder.
Here are your hosts, Chris and AC.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you, yes, you are the stakeholder in your own survival. And AC, I cannot begin to express how excited I am for today's episode.
Dude, this is awesome. You know, we were talking beforehand that I have met famous people before, and I've met people with Wikipedia pages before, which I think is kind of a flex, but I've never met anybody who was played by someone else in Hollywood before. I thought that was
right.
Cool. So I just haven't. So anyway, welcome. So retired Master Sergeant Brad Colbert is here with us today in studio, and I'm just excited to pick his brain about everything, all kinds of crazy topics we're going to throw at him today. But this is exciting. So Brad, thank you so much for showing up.
No, the pleasure is all mine. I'm excited about the topic, and I'm excited to listen to what you have to bring up. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and for anyone who doesn't know your background or how you got to where you are, how would you kind of summarize your military career and kind of the path that led you into training, consulting, and now what you're doing with Carry On?
Sure. So I was a uniformed services for 21 years. I was a Marine. I was a recon Marine, which is a specialty within the Marine Corps that in many ways shares a lot of the same landscape as the special operations community currently does. And I did it for a long time. And I think that set me up with a unique set of skills that was attractive to government organizations once I left uniformed service. And I did that for about a decade, and then recently just left working for the federal government, and I am freelance now. I think that a lot of the time that I spent in uniform and a lot of the things that I did after the military has definitely given me a first-rate education, not just in life, but again in a very unique set of skills that only those that have been in combat in arduous conditions, operated in very small units for extended periods of time can speak to. So I'm lucky in so many ways to have gotten that opportunity. I was with the British Royal Marine Commandos for several years. I spent some time working hand with, deeply with the Army. And then I also worked at an acquisitions command within the Marine Corps at headquarters Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. So very diverse and lots of different experiences, lots of different trips around the world.
Kind of the jack of all trades, master of none, but you're a master at everything you do. So I can't really say that, but that's,
yeah. I mean, I would be lying if I said that I was a master of everything, but I like, as the old adage goes, a mile wide and an inch deep. So the world is a curious place and I like to explore it.
fantastic.
So for those that don't know, go back in the Wayback Machine, there was a reporter by the name of Evan Wright who rode backseat in your Humvee during the sort of tip of the spear into the Iraq invasion in, I think, 2003. And that's where I think a lot of your exploits come from is you're widely known through this Generation Kill, both the book and then the movie where I think it was an HBO miniseries where Alex Skarsgård played you, correct?
Yeah. That's correct. So the original premise for the book was a 3-issue Rolling Stones article. Evan at the time was a freelance print reporter for the Rolling Stones, one of only 2 in the entire Iraq war, by the way, which is very unique. Most everyone else was media or radio. So he was print. So his reporting was playing the long game. I mean, he was with me and my team for almost 5 months in its entirety, and he collected a tremendous amount of notebook writing down, monologuing, dialogue. He turned that into a 3-part Rolling Stones series And then he wrote a book, and the book was later optioned by HBO. And as you mentioned, Alexander Skarsgård played me. I think it was really one of his first big roles, and masterfully done, if I do say so myself. That, uh, seems to have been the long and the short of it. Yeah.
So you and Evan Wright, you guys still keep in touch? Are you guys still boys?
Yeah. So I would love to say that was the case, but unfortunately, earlier this year, Evan took his life, and he's no longer with us.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. Were
Yeah.
you guys in touch?
Many of us were. Evan and I have known each other and stayed in touch fairly regularly. He had a lot of demons from his past, from his childhood, and it's very unfortunate. You know, he had just married. He had a small child with his new wife, and sadly, both of those are now on their own. And so he had plans to come out and visit me at my home in Georgia, and unfortunately, that just never took place.
That's so unfortunate. You know, I'd heard a interview with you, or maybe it was a video I saw where you were talking about just how stress affects people and how, I guess, depression and all those things that can affect people, not just people that served in combat, but anybody who experienced these kinds of traumas. You talked, I think, a little bit about mass shootings, these kinds of traumas where you've got a lot of adrenaline for a long time and how that affects people in the long term. And I really appreciate some of that stuff that you'd said about just how it's not just affecting people in combat, but anybody who's been in those insanely stressful situations, just how that affects them. I'm sure that could have, was partially the case here.
I think it was. I don't think it was one singular instance. I know that, again, Evan had some sexual trauma from childhood, and there's been quite a few that have taken their lives that have been in my orbit this year. And oddly enough, macabre topic though it may be, one of the characters that was also in the show that played a good friend of mine, Ray Person, he just took his life about 2 weeks ago as well.
Yeah, I think Chris had sent that to me. I
did hear
just
about that,
saw
yeah.
that. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird what effects complex PTSD can have on people, and it is a macabre topic, like you said, but it's something that if we don't confront now and understand the symptoms of, mental health can, very easily take a back seat, and then that's when it becomes a problem. You got
It
the
is.
three kids in the back
Yeah.
seat just bouncing around.
Yep. No, you're 100% correct. And it is one of the things that sort of I've always championed is those invisible wounds and destigmifying those invisible wounds and really pulling back the curtain on that epidemic. And it is an epidemic. There's a tremendous amount of people who take their lives because of this. And I think it's unfortunate. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on it, but of all the gun deaths, the gun related deaths, a statistic that's often overlooked is that about 51% of those gun deaths is suicide. And so not to say that there's not a gun epidemic in the United States, and I certainly don't want to make this the topic, but the majority of those are people taking their own lives. They just happen to use a gun. So it's a problem nationwide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's talk about some prepping topics, what you came here to do.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you.
I know you spent year in Afghanistan, and then you were in the invasion of Afghanistan, and then you were in the invasion of Iraq, correct?
I was. Yes.
So
that is correct.
with all of that time operating in bare bones, austere, unpredictable conditions, what would you say the mindset or kind of internal discipline, how did that become more important than any or all of your gear?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's the overarching, magic ace up the sleeve that I would tell almost anyone. It's mental preparedness. You have got to get your head in the game. You cannot be distracted. You cannot be focused elsewhere. You cannot be thinking of anything else but the moment, because so much is happening in the moment that affects your immediate safety and by extension, the safety of those around you. So being in the moment, being grounded, being present, mental resiliency, those are the things that I felt in myself that were so important. The things that I try to instill on those that worked with me and for me is be grounded, be present, be in the moment, pay attention to what you're doing. Because as soon as you don't, your mind is elsewhere, you become complacent, and complacency kills. And that's just pure and simple.
I like it. I like it. And when you're kind of in that combat scenario or disaster response or stuff is going just very, very wrong, what's kind of the first thing that you personally assess when everything hits the fan? I mean, whether it's combat or daily life, when it just goes to shit, what are you assessing and taking inventory of?
Yeah. So I think when you're in a crisis and the adrenaline spikes, as you know, there's a whole host of physiological changes that happen in our body. Our blood shunts from the extremities to our core. We experience time dilation, auditory exclusion, focused of vision, and micro movements become very difficult. And that's an environment that is really hard to operate in. It's hard to problem solve. It's hard to get yourself out of. So for me, the very first thing I do in a crisis situation is I try to orient myself in time and place. Where am I? Identify things that are around me to help calm me down, couple of deep breaths, and focus on the immediate steps for my survival. Sort of like, put my own oxygen mask on first before helping those around me. And the way that I do that is, like I said, I orient myself in time and place. And whether it's a bomb going off, a mortar attack, a small arms attack, you name it, the physiological responses, at least as observed by myself, are all the same. I know what I'm going to experience because I've been here before. So knowing that, I start my mental checklist. Okay, am I okay? Yes, I'm fine. Am I movement? Can I move? Am I ambulatory? I have all my fingers and toes. Yep, everything checks out. Okay, let's try to calm down. And what's the immediate step? What do I need to accomplish first? My life is okay. Are the people's lives around me okay? Nope. Okay, let's go solve that. All right, now what's the next problem? And it's kind of like that, eating the elephant one bite at a time, but it all starts with you. And if you're not functional, you're a liability.
Now, you mentioned movement there, and I know that's probably a theme with a lot of recon Marines because that's the job. You're moving around a lot. And in Carry On, you talk a lot about movement and staying ahead of problems and things like that. What's your philosophy on mobility versus kind of hunkering down for
Yeah.
civilians, for people that aren't recon Marines?
Yep. I'll tell you, in my opinion, I would always recommend staying in place for a whole host of reasons. It's your home turf. It's your house, it's your condo, your apartment, whatever the case may be, it's your neighborhood, you know it. I would assume that the bulk of your survival equipment is probably cached in your house, and you're safe there for the most part, unless something external forces you out. I would always recommend staying in place. There are a whole suite of problems that you now introduce the minute you go mobile, whether it's in a vehicle or on foot. So, if at all possible, for a civilian, somebody who has not had extensive practice. Now, and I want to just digress for a second. There's a difference between training and experience. You can sit in a classroom, you can listen to a lecture, you can read a book, you can watch a PowerPoint, you can check out YouTube. Love it. All theoretical knowledge. But if you have not iterated that out in the world over and over and over again, it doesn't count. It's not experiential. You don't know what you're talking about. You can talk about it, but you don't know what it feels like. So I would say, if at all possible, stay in place. unless something forces you out, stay in place. Have all of your items ready to go if need be. But yeah, that's my advice.
I appreciate you helping us kind of bust that myth, because there really is this whole the bug out myth, right? There's a lot of people that just focus on this bugging out when something happens, and I've got my badass bug out vehicle, and I've got all my gear and all this stuff. But yeah, you really are going into the unknown versus maybe a tactically rough known situation, which, like you said, is your home or your castle. So that is one tactical myth that I appreciate you helping us bust. But do you have any other? Are there any other of those tactical myths that maybe you see people constantly repeat online that you wish would just crawl into their hole and die? Like what is your tampon in the bullet wound?
So, so I love that. There's so many. There's so many. God, like I don't even. There's a lot of individuals who love preparedness because it's sexy. They like the
Yes,
gear.
Of
They
course.
like the shirts and the hats and the stickers. Real preparedness is boring. It's truly boring, because what you're doing is you're doing a lot of research. You're doing a lot of rehearsal. You're doing a lot of chalk talks, right? What happens if it's 2 a.m. and something happens and you're not home and I am? How are we going to come up together? Okay, let's practice it. That's not exciting. No, they want to pick up a gun. They want to go to the range. They want to talk about their latest backpack and, oh, look at my 4-wheel drive vehicle. No, dude, peel the stickers off your windows. Stop announcing that you're a prepper. Don't tell people that you have guns in the house, and be the gray man. If that's like anything, be the gray man. That's going to keep you alive. I, I love the myth of, oh, this is a silly one and it may not fall into the same context, but so I can't wait for somebody to break into my house so that I can, chase them down through the hallway and shoot them. I'm like, okay, check it out, bro. I've had over a decade of combat experience, and the last thing that even I am going to do is go clearing rooms in my house. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hard point deep as I can in the room. I'm going to announce loudly and clearly that I'm armed. Do not come into the room. And I'm going to have, and that's it. And I'm going to have the phone on 911 and an open speaker line. I'm not going to go clearing houses. The myth of, if I rack the shotgun, the intruder is going to hear that and drop and go run. No, they're not. They're most likely not. A, your shotgun should have already been loaded. You don't need to keep racking it. B, you're assuming
But it's a great
rational.
sound.
I know, I love that. You're assuming a rational mindset. Okay, so leaving that one aside, the other one that I hate is the lone wolf survivor model. I love Hollywood movies, and we can talk about movies till the sun comes up, but it doesn't mean that they represent fact. Putting a pack on your back and going out into the wilderness thinking that you're going to be this lone survivor is dumb. It's just dumb, and it's a myth that needs to go away. The best way that you're going to survive is with a pack, a wolf pack. You people around you who share your mentality, who complement your skills, who provide skills that you don't necessarily have. And like we said just a minute ago, staying in place with that wolf pack. And that's how you're going to make it through a crisis, not by, going off into the wilderness and just you're going to avoid all of these people. No, it doesn't work that way.
I really do appreciate that. And I am right there with you when it comes to you see so many people that just beg for someone to break into their home because then that's when they get to play Rambo. And these are the people, by the way, that have an unsuppressed AR-15 next to their bed. And Chris and I talk about this sometimes, that you get to shoot that in your house exactly once.
Yep. Not to mention the fact that, you're shooting a 5.56, which is going to, I don't want to get wonky here, but it's going to overpenetrate. Where are your neighbors? Where are the kids? Congratulations, you killed the intruder. And oh, by the way, you put 30 rounds through that wall into your neighbor's home. Bravo.
Yeah, and 12 gauge double aught buckshot will go through multiple walls and out into the street. I know that from personal experience, but 5.56, that's going through your house, your neighbor's house, and ending up somewhere in the mayo jar in their fridge.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I wish people would read some people's expert advice and then adjust their defensive posture to apply just a modicum of common sense. That's all. Just a little bit.
So, for someone who has never lived in rough terrain, and what are kind of the three simple things that you always do to get started getting comfortable with discomfort?
So you have to sort of adopt a stoic philosophy when it comes to survival, when it comes to preparedness. You have to be comfortable with discomfort. And the only way you can achieve that is you have to be uncomfortable. You have to be cold, wet, and miserable. And you have to do it enough where not only is it no longer top of mind when it occurs, but you come out the other side with a better understanding of how you can mitigate it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have swam through the ocean a nautical mile, stayed wet as I crossed the beach full of sand, and continued to be wet and cold probably for several hours afterwards, over and over. And you learn a lot about yourself along the way. And you learn in those events what you could do to mitigate some of it, right? Because you want, I feel you want to be able to endure hardship and all of the mental and physical stress, but you also want the ability to mitigate it where it's possible to mitigate. So to answer your question, I'd say the first thing that you would probably want to do would be mental preparedness. Challenge yourself. See what your individual limitations are. Put yourself in a situation that is uncomfortable and see how long you can endure that. And that can be something very simple, like in the morning when you get in the shower, instead of hot water, try cold. Try cold for 30 seconds. Work up to a minute. Work up for 2 minutes. See how long you can endure just being cold. Try no air conditioning in the house at night when you sleep. Hey, in the summer in Georgia, that's a challenge, let me tell you. Um, try skipping a meal. The old adage, I think, rings true. I think society is 24 hours and 2 meals away from total collapse. I really believe that. Skip a meal and see what that feels like. Can you handle it? Can you handle with a sudden change in your sleep pattern, in your routine? All of these little things that help build mental resiliency, man, those will pay off in spades in the event of a crisis.
So you're talking about some of these, the harshest, some of these resource poor environments and things like that. Let's take that back to those environments that you have operated in. What what has truly surprised you about what humans can adapt to and what they can't adapt to?
I was amazed at people in especially the Middle East, where you're talking about temperatures that are regularly triple digits. That's a level of discomfort that a lot of Americans have not experienced. No air conditioning, a fan, if you're lucky. Most of these people sleep on the roofs and they're comfortable in this climate and doing without. I'm amazed at just how resilient humans are. It we take it for granted and we have a lot of first world problems. I get it. I totally do. Take yourself out of the United States, travel abroad, go down to, South America, go to, South Africa, go to the Middle East, go to some of these countries where, you know, not, not everybody has a car, not everybody has power. I mean, I lived I spent some time in Beirut. Every day, at least twice a day in Beirut, there would be a total unequivocal blackout citywide.
Interesting.
Yep. Happened all the time. And culture, that society just is used to it. That's the norm. They know that that's going to happen, whether you're at a traffic light, whether you're in a restaurant, whether you're at school or work. It's just their modus operandi. And that is what amazes me, is how people are adaptable to things that you and I would take for granted or couldn't even conceptualize. And you can carry that to a really dark place. A lot of the places that I have been, and their respect for life are much less than ours. Their willingness to accept death and rapidly and unexpectedly is shocking if you don't experience it firsthand. Very, very, say la vie. Well, he's dead. Let's move on, as they step over the body. I'm like, dude, that guy just died. I mean, isn't that? Nope, don't care. So the one thing that I think people can't adapt to is, at least in my experience, solitude. I think human beings we're pack animals. We need society. If not society, we need a tribe. We need a household. We need a clique. It is a very rare creature indeed that exists devoid of all human contact in perpetuity. That I have not seen anyone do, really.
Wow.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to ask a question actually for both of you while we're talking about being in these resource poor environments. And this is something I think Hollywood really sensationalizes. But is it true that the Army gets everything they've ever needed and the Marine Corps gets nothing except like crayons and an MRE a week?
I don't know. You want to answer that one first? What do you think?
So the Army does certainly get more logistical support in austere environments, but we also serve a completely different role. So the Marines act as America's shock troops. They are designed to go in light, fast, and lethal. And Army goes in heavy with support and, a sledgehammer instead of the scalpel. Marines can definitely act as a sledgehammer when they get pissed off, but they are designed to be those kind of 24 hours or less shock troops on the ground getting shit done. The Army is going to take their time and bolster resources, get everything in place, and then start moving across the line. So we get more time to build resources to take with us.
Yeah, I would agree with that at all. And the one thing that the Army and the Marine Corps have in common is we both hate the fucking Air Force, because they show up with everything. They've got televisions and microwaves and washers and dryers. I'm like, dude, we're in Afghanistan. I mean, did you really need a microwave here? I guess you did. Oh, you have a Pop-Tart. How nice.
Yeah. I will say it was nice when the Air Force rolled in with the Burger King trailer.
Yes.
For the first time. That's a different sight.
They have a huge budget. I mean, those aircraft bring in a lot of dollars, congressional dollars, and they spend some of that on creature comforts. And yeah, I get it.
And so I've got kind of a question. I want to rewind just a little bit. You were talking about kind of that combat shock sensation and the physiological response that humans go through. All of the blood leaves the extremities, which is part of the reason that your extrasensory motor control fails, is because you don't have enough blood to get everything going. But you talked about time dilation. In all of the times that you have been in those oh shit, here we go scenarios, have you ever tried using that known effect of time dilation to your advantage? You know how long you have to start to sort things out and prevent your OODA loop from being broken.
That's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been. I don't know if I've ever been able to do it. I don't know if I've ever been able to control it. So like most of the physiological reactions that I have experienced in high stress environments, and those are predominantly fight or flight instances where I've either been at risk of dying or have had to inflict death, that massive spike in adrenaline, I've had the same physiological effects, but I don't know as if I've ever been able to kind of harness them to my advantage, if I understand your question correctly, especially when it comes to time dilation. It sort of just happens and you become very hyper focused, able to see the smallest details, observe the most minute environmental stimulus, and casually and calmly flow. My driver, who was also my RTO in in Iraq in the invasion, depicted in Generation Kill as well. He and I were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago on this very same subject. We were in the middle of a firefight one time, and he was in the driver's seat, I was in the passenger seat, and we were just having a normal conversation, like you and I were having right now. Now, outside of that bubble, there were rounds going down range for both ways, but our vehicle was stuck and we had to get it out. And I was just calmly having this conversation with him about, should we go this way? Should we go that way? Well, what about this? And it's so incredibly outside of your control, I think. So I don't know if I've ever been able to truly control it, but I will tell you that it's fascinating in the moment. Absolutely fascinating.
Having been there, it's a different experience. It really is.
I want to ask about those super high stress environments where, conditions start to deteriorate and tempers rise and you're in very high stress environments. And this is a two-part question: is how do you keep your team functional and not just totally self-destructive? And the second part of that question is, how can the average person or the prepper relate that to the small family unit or the prepper group that aren't, combat proven Marines?
Well, it's easier with a recon team because the men that you're with have all gone through vetting. They're a known commodity. They've all they're all baselined with the same set of skills. Now, certain individuals in the team may have advanced skills or experiences that enable them to bring more to the table or help stress inoculate them, but they're all baselined. And that's a huge advantage. Even with that being said, you have to, in crisis leadership is different than any other type of leadership. So whether you adopt a democratic leadership style, a paternalistic, an authoritarian, it doesn't matter. Crisis leadership is different because it is for a very short duration, high intensity, and your leadership style needs to change. Your communication needs to increase. The style that you're communicating needs to increase and change. I say candor over charisma is one of the things that I talk about. You can get a beer later, but in that moment, this is an emergency and I need you to shut up and do what the hell I'm saying. And so that's something that needs to be understood by the civilian community, I think. You're going to have to change your leadership style, and you can't have duality of command. So if you're a small family unit and you are preparing for a worst case scenario, it doesn't matter who it is. If it's, mom or dad or whatever your dynamic is, don't care, but you have to agree. And they're the ones that are in charge. Everyone needs a job. In the recon platoon, you have a team leader, an assistant team leader, an RTO, an assistant RTO, a point man, and a slack man. That's it. 6 people. Everyone has a job. Everyone knows what that job is. Your job as a leader is really easy. Make sure everyone's doing their job. That's it.
It's too simple.
Super simple. And the beautiful thing about being a team member, not a leader, someone's going to tell you what to do. All you have to do is just listen to them, so that it's a beautiful symbiotic relationship and you can build that in the family unit the exact same way. Susie, you're in charge of A, B, C, and D. Billy, you're in charge of X, Y, and Z. I'm going to do this. You're going to do that. Everybody break. That's crisis management, and it works. It works.
Yeah, you kind of have to look at it as when you are in that crisis management or crisis leadership mode, you switch to the mean mommy voice, if you will, and it becomes shut up and color, do what I told you.
That's right. Yeah, and they know that, right? Because if you're good at this preparedness scenario, you've rehearsed, you've done chalk talks, you've done table drills, you've done rehearsals, and you know from the Army, if you don't rehearse, you're not going to perform in crisis. You're not. You're going to curl up into the fetal position. You got to rehearse. You got to practice. You got to drill. You got to train. Man, it's all about training.
Live fire drills galore.
Yes. Yes.
So for beginner preppers or really kind of civilians who think they know what it is, but they don't, I'm going to talk about the word tactical, because a lot of people just jump straight to, oh, that's military grade, which we know military grade is built by the cheapest bidder. But they jump into gear and things like that. What would you say is actually more tactical, or what makes a tactic useful in your experience?
So a tactic is nothing more than an individual skill. Tying your shoes well could be a tactic. It's not, but it could be, right? It could be.
Mm-hmm.
But things like how you pack your rucksack, or how you clean a weapon or build a fire, all of those individual skills are individual tactics. And when you apply them to a problem, it is then tactical. So tactics is doing the individual things and doing them right. You can prepare yourself to do individual things and do them well through repetition. What is it that you are trying to survive or live through or come out on the other side on? Okay, now break those down into individual tasks, big tasks, and then little tasks, and then practice them. That's tactics. Doing the individual things really, really well is tactics. I shy away from telling people, oh, you need to get this gun and you need to go to the range and you need to shoot this. No, stop doing that. What you need to do is you need to go to the doctor and you need to get a physical, and you need to make sure that you're in shape. And if you have high cholesterol, you need to fix it, or at least get the medication. If you have dental work, fix the dental work. I'm telling you, all of these individual things, and you guys know this, you know it. These individual things, the small things, the simple things, the boring things, those compound in crisis. And that's what's going to get you killed. That's what's going to get other people that depend on you killed. I don't want to get into a gender war here, but let's just, facts are facts. Men are stronger, and your job as the man is probably going to be a lot of the brute physical heavy lifting that the other people in your little group can't do. And if your cholesterol is high, or you have low blood sugar, or you have dental work that hasn't been fixed, that's the kind of stuff that's going to come back to bite you in the butt. Fix that first. Get in a physical shape. Yeah, totally. And then go buy the cool gun and the nice pack. Like I get it. Reward yourself at the end for all of that. So I hope that answers the question at least a little bit.
Yeah, I got a root canal. I can reward myself with a new AR.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's exactly what you just said. I actually really like you said about tactics. That's awesome, because breaking it down to those bite-sized bits that people can understand. And in flight school, I had a flight instructor that told me that hope is not a tactic, and that's a tactic a lot of people fall back on. Is hope as a tactic is like planning to run the airplane, planning to land the airplane just as you run out of gas. Like, that's hope is a tactic. And hope should never be a tactic. You should have those little skills, whether it is just knowing how to tie your shoes, not hoping that you could tie your shoes the first time you have to.
You're so right. It's doing the small things well, and I think that's the difference between a professional and an amateur. A professional has failed at the basics more times than the amateur has ever tried. I am not at the point where I would still consider myself an expert, and I've failed more times than I can count. But yeah, those tactics, those individual skills, they're cumulative. They add up, and they really are the difference between success and failure.
And what's the phrase? I think it's amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong.
So it's well said, and I absolutely believe that. And a quick story, and I hate to go into story time, but it took me a long time in the Marine Corps to realize when I was proficient at my job. When you start out, you want your 14 pieces of flair, right? Like 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 that's the mark. Like that's what people think an expert is. I'm gonna get an AR-15 and it's gonna have this and it's gonna have the flashlight and I'm gonna get no. That's not the expert. That's the amateur. You know what the expert is? You know what the guy that scares the shit out of me? It's a bare bones AR-15 with a 20-round box mag and iron sights. That's the expert because he knows he has stripped down his load, his warfighting load, to the bare minimum, only the necessities. That's the expert. It took me a long time to realize that. And I know in the prepper community, the adage is I'm just going to, have an answer for everything. I'm going to have this. I'm going to have a box of this. I'm like, okay, dude, I got it.
Yeah, we're all hoarders.
Yep. You're not going to be able to use 90% of it. Now, if you're hard pointing, okay, sure. No problem. Totally agree. To a point. You still have to be proficient in using it. But anyways, that in my mind, the mark of an expert, it's the minimalist. That's the lethal. That's the most dangerous person in the room.
I love that. The iron sights, man, they're like the stick shift of the optics world.
That's true.
That's a really good way to look at
I know.
it.
I know
So
none of us
true.
want to just talk about guns all day, although we probably do. But there was a video I saw of you recently, and I totally related to it, of you just walking out the back door and dumping a couple mags and not picking up your brass. And I was like, is that because
Yep.
I've never served. I didn't know you had to pick up brass, man. That's just my life. As I just love that is I've got a range set up in the backyard and I can go out and I can practice and I can hone my skills a little bit. And I only pick up the shotgun shells because that's what I'm going to hit with the lawnmower.
That's right. Yeah, it's true. And honestly, we'll bring that anecdote back to real world. There was and I believe it was in New York. There was a famous story about a gunfight that happened with some law enforcement officials who died in a gunfight because they stopped and picked up their brass when they were getting ready to reload. And the reason is they had trained that way on the indoor range at the police range. They would stop shooting at the end of the mag and go and pick up their brass. And that built muscle memory. And that's what you fall back on. And so in so many ways, it's freeing not to have to pick up my brass. and then I'm always reminded by that story about like, I don't want to build bad habits. So yeah, it's just going to sit there. It's out there right now.
I love that. I instruct for a marine law enforcement organization, and one of the things we teach is when you change mags, you say bingo, and that's just so everybody else knows that you're changing at the time, right?
Yeah.
And we had one of our marine law enforcement officers. This happened. It was down south. I want to say this might have been Louisiana, but he got into a gunfight on his boat, jumped in the water. He's returning fire. And he didn't realize he was underwater until he tried to say the word bingo, because he was changing out a mag and he was bingo, and he just didn't know. Like it was that kind of muscle memory. It's exactly what you're talking about, where he just instinctively during a gunfight had to say the word bingo when he changed out his mags. And you're so right that it's just that muscle memory is just so imperative. I mean, that's just people. That's what we do.
It is. It is. I mean, and that's so important. It's like why I don't want my children to have toy guns, Nerf guns, anything. I don't want any of that in their hands because they're building really bad habits every time they pick up that toy pistol or squirt gun. And I know it sounds silly, but I'm like, I don't want them building those muscle memories. And then when I go to teach them how to shoot, they've got a boatload of bad habits. But you can extend that to almost any of the skills that we are talking about. If you're not doing it the right way each and every time, no matter how painful and arduous it is, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Dude, that's so true. I was just, because it was just Christmas, so I was watching Die Hard naturally. And
Love it. Great movie.
there is some point, maybe you guys can help me with this, during, I want to say late 80s, when movie producers decided they actually needed an operator like as an expert on set. There was some point between Die Hard and Heat where people stopped shooting from the waist. Do you guys know?
It's so
when
funny
did that happen? Was it Steven Seagal never did it? But at some point, we went from down here up here during the movies.
It's so funny you mentioned that. I was watching They Live last night with Rowdy Roddy Piper. Great movie. John Carpenter.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Like, such a great movie. And I'm looking at and I do mean every single person was shooting from the hip. They were all hip for. I'm like, what the fuck? You've got a front sight post and a rear. What is happening right now?
I don't know when actually I lied. It was after Die Hard, because Die Hard 2, in that scene where they do the shootout in the airport, same thing. All the SWAT team guys were shooting from the hip with their M16. So it was after that, but it was sometime before Heat. I know at Heat, we went to really good tactical scenes in movies, but sometime before that there's this magic point in time.
It was probably the invasion of Panama because it was televised. So we actually got to see how soldiers were firing.
Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was it right there. You're right. Anyway, so Brad, you have given us so much awesome intel, and we really do appreciate that. But let's talk about you for a little bit. So let's talk about Carry On. Where did that start? Why did you start a podcast? For people who don't know, you've got a podcast called Carry On. Where'd that come from? Why did you decide to do it? And what's your goal with that?
Mm-hmm. So I kind of started, it was something that Jason and I, a good friend of mine who is a documentary filmmaker, has made a wonderful movie called Homemade. I recommend you see it. And he and I we had workshopped starting some kind of a podcast, or at least moving forward with messaging, right? And it was never the right time for him, or it was never the right time for myself. And then both of our lives sort of changed. I left federal service and I had a lot more free time. And then I also didn't have to check with mom and dad if I was allowed to do this sort of thing anymore. So that helped too. And I wanted to continue a lot of the messaging that I had been doing all the way back to active duty, as a matter of fact, which is veterans health, mental health, destigmifying invisible wounds, talking about PTSD, and trying to shed some light on emergent treatment techniques for your mental health. And that's, I think, first and foremost why, when the opportunity presented itself, I moved forward with the Carry On podcast, which, for those of you that are not familiar with the parlance of the military, Carry On is a command given by a person in authority to those junior to them to say, as you were, continue life as you knew it. Can go back to doing what you were doing before I walked into the room. And for the veteran, for the military service man or woman who is transitioning or maybe even still serving, Carry On is meant to convey, go back to the status quo, find your homeostasis, go back to the way that you were before the trauma, before the wound. And so in keeping with that ethos, we interview people who are on the cutting edge of understanding mental health, treating mental health, providing different modalities for mental health, whether it's experimental, breaking, or tried and true. We talk about it all. We don't pull any punches, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And yeah, along the way, we have some fun. We don't keep it all serious. We talk about some other things, share some stories, drink some good whiskey. So that's part of it. Yeah.
There we go.
Or like that. Awesome. So for listeners wanting to get better or smarter or just harder to kill in general, what advice can you give someone starting out?
I would say anyone who's starting out, you need to become mentally strong. And that's very amorphous. It's kind of hard to nail down. So let me be specific when I talk about mental hard. You need to begin a stress inoculation regime. And you can do that in a number of different ways, but put yourself in situations that are stressful, that are challenging, that are new. Go rock climbing, go free fall, go hang gliding. We call it adventure training in certain circles, but I want you to do something that challenges your mental stress. Do something at 2 a.m. or after you've gone for a mile run. Do a logic puzzle. I want you to try going home from work a way that your phone doesn't know. In fact, turn your phone off and try driving from one state to the next. Figure it out. Put yourself in extremely challenging mental situations to build mental toughness and to inoculate yourself to stress. I would say that's the very first thing that you need to do. The second thing is you have to be functionally fit. I love the fact that there's people out there who find satisfaction from being a gym rat. That's great. I love it. Can you go 25 miles under load? Can you carry a 35-pound pack for an entire day through the woods, not following or hand railing a road? Can you do it? If you can, great. Check that off the list. And then the second thing is I think you need to understand your limitations. Know where your individual failures are. What are your shortfalls? I know mine. I know the things that I am poor at. Identify those in yourself. And that's really hard because it requires you to look in the mirror and take a hard look at yourself and say, you're deficient in these areas. You are not as good as you thought you were. What can we do to fix it? Because once you identify your weaknesses, then you can overcome them or at least surround yourself with people that can help. Not everyone's comfortable with the sight of blood. I get it. Nobody wants to stitch up a wound or do a needle thoracentesis or a tracheotomy. It's gross. I get it. No problem. You don't
I
have
volunteer
to.
as tribute.
I volunteer as tribute. But surround yourself with someone that does. So those are, I think, are the three things. Stress inoculation, and also known as mental toughness, right? Functional fitness, and then know your shortcomings. Know yourself. Seek self-improvement. I think those were the three that I would talk about.
I really like how so much of what you just said fits into the practice your preps mentality, and especially the last part about being honest with yourself on your shortcomings. That takes a level of vulnerability that a lot of people don't have with their spouse or partner, that you have to be vulnerable with yourself, and that's just something that a lot of people don't recognize. And so it
Yeah.
takes a lot of courage to get there, and I like how you brought that up.
Yeah, I think that you do yourself and your dependents, and I don't know who that might be, a disservice if you're not honest with yourself. No one wants to, in the moment of a crisis, discover that your teammate, partner, significant other is not who they said they would be. That sucks. So find out beforehand, either through demonstration, through experience, or like we talked about, through self-actualization. Yeah, it's vulnerable. It yeah, but that's what, if you're committed to this as an endeavor, that's what it takes.
And I do have a question kind of along a different track. So I don't want to bring up Generation Kill too much,
No,
but
whatever you need to do.
there's one line that it was in the series, it was in the video game Medal of Honor, and you were credited with saying it. And it was right after you took the airfield. Did you actually say, "We just took an airfield. That was pretty fucking ninja"?
Yeah, guilty as charged.
Epic.
Never let it be said that I did not have corny lines in my life. I I did say I did say that. You know, one of the things that I talk about to other Marines about why I as was successful as I was, or at least if I was to give you advice on how to be successful as a Marine, and it applies to other disciplines. It's not just a Marine. Um, there's a few of them, but the last one is, don't take yourself too seriously. You, you're never the smartest, you're never the fastest, you're never the best. You are always going to be good at something and really bad at others. Find the humor in life. Don't take yourself so seriously. Don't get lost in your rank, your title, your position. Don't forget that life and living it is supposed to be fun and enjoyable. So, yeah, even in the middle of combat, you got to drop cheesy one-liners.
That's epic.
I love that. So, for people that want to follow your work or support what you're doing and want to learn more, is listening to the podcast the best place? I mean, do you make like a fraction of a penny every time we rent Generation Kill, or
Nope.
what?
No, I am entitled to no royalties because it's not my intellectual property. Evan Wright is the sole owner of the book, and he optioned the miniseries to HBO. So HBO owns that intellectual property. I make nothing.
Oh,
If you
okay.
are if you are interested in myself and the things that I have to talk about, and there's a lot, you can go to the website. It's bradcolbert.us, all one word. Bradcolbert.us is the sort of splash page. From there, you can branch off to wherever you like. If you want to listen to the Carry On podcast, it's on Spotify, it's on iHeart, it's on Apple, it's on everywhere that you love it. If you want to see this beautiful mug, and many have said that it is available on YouTube. So, yeah.
Awesome. And
Fantastic.
the real quick, the Jason's movie, was that homemade or homemade?
Homemade.
Homemade. I feel like this is that
Yeah.
this is that
M-A-D.
scene from Step Brothers. I'm like, I can help with the whole pan discussion here. So, but we'll post a link to all that. Obviously, we have a blog with every one of our
Yeah.
episodes, and I just want to make sure we get everything right. So we'll bounce that off you, but we'll certainly post post links to all your stuff so all of our listeners can find you. That would be awesome.
I appreciate that very much.
Of course. And as we're wrapping up the hour, I cannot believe it's already been an hour, but what questions do you have for us?
Yeah. So I have a question for you. I know that you both have an experience base in tactics, small unit and larger, and I love that. What trends have you seen in this genre, in the preparedness, in the prepper community over the last 20 years? What what is the latest and greatest trend or movement towards, do you think?
Daisy, do you want me to go first or you first?
I'll go. I will say that we used to call them survivalists, right? And it was this, it was this gritty subculture that people were sort of embarrassed to admit that they were part of. And I think now we're seeing that preparedness isn't really a dirty word. And there's a lot more synergies between, what we call prepping and homesteading and bushcrafting and things like that. I think in general, people are understanding we're falling back to the Boy Scout motto of always be prepared, right? Like people are understanding that saying that you're prepared for things doesn't mean that you're like some crazy right-wing nut job with a stash AR-15s. I mean, in many cases it does, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that you are prepared for things that are likely to happen to you. You've taken a look that, like you were talking about, that little bit of self-reflection, and you've taken a look at your own personal risk matrix, and you've said, well, I live in forest fire country. I'm maybe going to take some steps to limb the trees on my property so my house doesn't burn down. That is preparedness, and it's no longer this bad thing to be prepared. And I think that's the trend that I see that I love. And that's really why Chris and I started this, that, I'm a homesteader. I have bees and chickens, and some people would say that that's like a crazy survivalist mentality. And for me, it's actually just kind of like good for you,
Yeah. I love
And
it.
for me, I think the trend that I have noticed is particularly since COVID, when all of the lockdowns happened in March, April 2020. A lot of people went into isolation and had nothing to do because they either were laid off from work, they couldn't work, they were non-essential employees and they couldn't work from home, et cetera, et cetera. But you saw a ton of people, and this was right around the same time that TikTok really started becoming popular, is you see people doing more and more home gardening and sourdough starters and
Sourdough
different
starters, man, all over the place,
all
right?
of it.
They're fucking
That's
everywhere.
right.
But building their own self-reliance as a hobby, and then they realize, oh, well, I guess I can do prepping. It's not so much outside of my realm to go from a sourdough starter and my little herb garden to maybe I want to grow corn, maybe I want to grow beans, maybe I want to start to become more self-sufficient and less
Yeah.
reliable on the government, because we saw as an overarching society, we saw world governments and how they responded to the COVID crisis in real time, and we weren't happy with it. So you see this huge growth and just explosive energy behind things like gardening and growing your own food and becoming more self-sustaining. That's kind of the trend that I've seen.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
not crazy
fascinating.
anymore, right? To say,
Yeah.
I have noticed that our supply chain is fragile.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point. That is such a great point. I will say that is one takeaway from COVID that I am glad for, is that it showed America the fragility of our supply chain, and people sort of woke up to the fact that they may need to provide for themselves. And I love your comment. It sort of took the tinfoil hat off of being prepared and brought it home to every living room and dining room in America. And for that, I'm grateful. I liked also the fact that FEMA sort of put out a disaster preparedness guide for the zombie apocalypse, and it was tongue in right, and it was tongue in cheek, but they were doing it in a roundabout way of saying, you guys need to be prepared because the government's not going to be there for you all the time. So I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know our time is coming to a close, but Master Sergeant retired Bradley Colbert, we definitely appreciate you coming on, and it has been an absolute pleasure having you. It's
Yeah.
it's always good to connect with another vet, but the insight that you bring is just invaluable.
Well, it was a lot of fun. I really appreciate the conversation. And secretly, this is a topic that I am very enthused about. And I am a fellow prepper. So I am part of the community.
There we
It's
go.
awesome. Thank you so much. This was great.
Well, and join us next week. We're going to go in a completely new direction, like always. But until then, remember, you are your own stakeholder. We'll see you then.
Welcome to Stakeholder Prepping.